If you understood what I just said, the statement might seem a little redundant to you. Sign language is the neglected sister of English, just like the deaf and hard of hearing are the neglected brothers of ours. We commonly ignore them, tossing them to the side, instead of embracing this culture-thick people. For over 4 years, I've been studying deaf language and deaf culture, and have come to realize that these are people that have gone through a history of deaf oppression, changes in their culture, and changes in the future. Starting at the very beginning, we will look into the history of deaf culture. Deaf oppression has been a constant throughout the history of the deaf. According to a PBS video, the first school was called the Connecticut Asylum for the Education and Instruction of Deaf and Dumb Persons. These kinds of schools implored in the deaf people that they were subpar and they were mentally unstable and could not be educated like regular people. Fast forward a few generations, and the deaf had universities but still felt oppressed. A movement in the 1980s was called Deaf President Now, and it was an 8-day rally for the very first deaf president of Gallaudet University. According to Gallaudet's website, this was a watershed event that led to the appointment of the 124-year-old university's first deaf president. So these are some pictures from the rally. It was a big deal, and it took place in Washington, D.C., so they went to the Capitol and all kinds of places. From then until now, the university, as well as the culture, has made massive strides in progress. Deaf culture has developed through primarily the university and art, but also in other ways, such as Mark, who is a Swedish rapper who does all of his rapping in sign language. Gallaudet has been changing. It now embraces hearing as well as deaf people to create successful interpreters, deaf members of society, and hearing people that have been immersed in the deaf world. DeVia is one of the most successful movements in sharing deaf culture. DeVia stands for Deaf View Image Art, and it's a way for deaf artists to show their culture. This piece right here is my personal favorite. It's by Chuck Bayer. It's called Art, and he's signing the sign for art while having all the different art themes around him and such. And we'll see more from him. Joy Reguera, an interpreter I interviewed, listed 5 very important themes in Deaf View Image Art: deaf pride, deaf culture, the beauty of sign language, deaf technology, and the breakdown of family from deaf versus hearing. 4 of the most famous artists from DeVia are Betty Miller, who did this piece called Deaf Identity Crayons, which shows the past of deaf, which you can't really see, but it says like deaf and dumb and hearing impaired, versus the future that's saying hard of hearing. CODA, which is children of deaf adults, and more deaf gain rather than hearing loss. The Star Spangled Hearing Banner, which shows stars by hands, and if you ever get the time to read it, it's actually pretty impressive. And deaf technology. Chuck Bayer, who focuses on the beauty of sign language. This is a sign for color. The sign for gator, he shows with the gator and the hands, which I know is probably not appropriate at Fleur State, but whatever. America, which is shown as a melting pot, but he shows it with the flag. And heart. John O'Malley uses hands to show nature. He has the mountain right here, the moon, the sun up there. And then Susan Duport shows how sign language is a natural language. She usually uses nature and nudity to show sign language. Some of the art that has been made during this movement translates to the future of deaf culture. Deaf culture shows itself in different ways now, like you're deaf when. And so changes are being made in their culture and in themselves. Changes have been medical and legal primarily. Medical advancements aim to reverse the problem. This is a cochlear implant. Most people have seen this video of when the baby first hears its mom and a hearing aid. And I actually ran into somebody on campus, like literally ran into them on campus that had a cochlear implant, so that was kind of interesting. These work to reverse the problem, but it does cause a lot of problems within the deaf community. Many people feel that when a child gets a cochlear implant, they're forced into the hearing world, but they're still not a hearing person, but they also don't have the culture of the deaf world. So they don't really have an identity. Legal advancements have been made to ensure a lack of discrimination. Section 504 protects deaf children from being discriminated against in schools. They receive public and proper education, whether that be with hearing aids, interpreters, what have you. And the Americans with Disabilities Act prevents deaf people from being discriminated against in the workplace. These advancements have led primarily to the unity of deaf people. Switched at Birth on ABC Family had an episode recently on cultural pride. Marlee Matlin, and if you can believe it, this is literally the same person, is the most famous deaf actress in the world, and she spoke in ASL to explain about deaf pride and deaf gain. Deaf culture, deaf oppression, and deaf changes have been major players in their community. This community of people has a very strong identity with who they are and what they believe in, their cultural pride and sense of understanding.